Hello and welcome to another Tuesday night Pell session. Tonight I would like to talk about thrusts. Thrusts are an excellent way to control your opponent's ability to move around where they're confident getting to, and also how much they expose and cover up to allow you to get in and out as you wish, and also to threaten them. Basically, a thrust can be used in two different situations. The first is from the standing start. The standing start thrust is to keep your opponent honest and to keep them at range. If they want to try with some big motion out, they're opening up their defense, and a thrust in such situations is really useful to basically just stop them in their tracks, make them pull back or cover up massively. However, a thrust from the start needs to be hidden. A thrust where you literally bring it online and then poke is not going to fool anyone. It's not going to stop an attack. What it will do is it'll get your opponent to change their position slightly to push your thrust offline because they know exactly what's coming at you. Instead, what we want to do is we want to move from a standard position ready to throw a shot straight into the thrust. There are two good ways in my view to come from this standing start position and roll into a thrust. The first is with the palm down to just bring that sword up over our head and drive that tip directly at our opponent. You can step forward if you're needing to with your sword foot, but either way it's a very direct line to our opponent. We're just trying to get them straight in the face. It is quite important that you don't draw that hand back forward and try and do any kind of arcs. We want that tip to move straight forward as smoothly and online as possible. The second style of standing start thrusts is a longer range one and requires us to open up, but it's a palm up thrust. This thrust involves us stepping forward, twisting the hand so the palm is now up, and then thrusting directly at our opponent's face. What that does is that gives us an extra long range, slightly more curly-cue style thrust, which we can use to get around an opponent's defense, come in behind a shield, behind a position, but still be at maximum range when we thrust at our opponent. Both of those are good opening thrusts as such, but they shouldn't be relied on. They're both reasonably slow. They're both got their advantages. However, what they're really great at is getting your opponent to cover up and block something, hopefully because you're thrusting at their face. And from this position, you can then roll into another shot to take advantage of the fact that they're temporarily blinded. For my part, I tend to practice these two opening thrusts and then a secondary shot to actually take advantage of my opponent being blinded, because I'm not expecting this first thrust to actually kill my opponent. The second style of thrusts is a thrust mid-fight. These thrusts are really useful for catching again your opponent as they want to step forward or they're opening up to do some maneuver, to cancel their normal thought process and their routine on what they're trying to do. These thrusts are usually done in the form of some kind of withdrawal and then a pushing forwards to actually get the kill. They rely on the fact that the sword is already on your opponent in some way before being driven back into your opponent. I, in general, do not bother too much with leg thrusts because the leg being such a round thing, the thrusts will always skip off. They're low percentage shots. The body is again not a bad place to thrust at. However, unless you are going deep on this offside and then tweak back and then in, that shield is usually in a position to block the body. So unless you're in a really good position for it, the quick body thrust is not necessarily the best one to go for. In general, face thrusts are the best way to go because A, most people have a massive flinch reaction when something comes straight for their face, and so they'll throw their shield up and blind themselves. And B, in our game, a thrust to the face just has to make forward contact. It does not have to be hard at all, so therefore it's really easy to get a kill that way. But likewise, as I was saying before, we're relying on the fact that the sword has already been there in them, there close to them in some place. We start with the withdraw and then we push back forward again. For this reason, to practice these style thrusts, I will usually just snap, offside, snap, side, and just practice being online, repetitive, because the key thing here is to be able to just throw them at a limb and get them online and actually able to hit their target. The most frustrating thing in the world seems to be to me throwing a shot, pulling back for a thrust and then missing your final target because you're just not quite accurate enough. Very frustrating thing to happen in the middle of a fight. Anyway, if you want to bring in those thrusts, a good way to do it is to add them into your 1 to 6 drill by adding a 7th position, which is a thrust. That means that you should be getting too used to being able to throw a thrust from any shot into generally the face or the body, but have a think about that. Remember, a shield is usually there on the body. However, you can quite often sneak one in depending on how the position you've actually got them to. Have a think of that, have a bit of a play, and I'll talk to you next week. See you later.